Next up is Whitney Preisser, who will talk to us about a very different topic.
Yes. All right, so imagine a group of animals that make up to 40% of all life on Earth, but up to 95% of species are undescribed. This is the plight of parasites. And human parasites make up less than 4% of all parasites, and I don't advocate for conserving those, but wildlife parasites are super important to ecosystems. And one way to visualize this is look at their roles. So this complicated mess is a food web. The red and green balls represent species like birds or frogs, and the blue are parasites. And you can see parasites are thoroughly enmeshed. They help control host populations, and they help move energy throughout an ecosystem. So one example of this are the horsehair worms that infect crickets, and they cause the crickets to jump into the water and die. And this helps further the worm life cycle. But it also provides benefit to fish. So up to 60% of a fish's diet is made up of these zombie crickets. So the parasites are instrumental in helping keeping the ecosystem going. So parasites are super important, but they're very understudied. And this is where my research comes into play. I study parasites of wildlife like snakes, fish, and mammals. And there's parasites in every vertebrate species on Earth, so there's unlimited opportunities for me to study them. In particular, I study how parasites vary over space and time. Are there more parasites now than there were 100 years ago? Where are parasites more common? And then how do human impacts like urbanization and climate change, is that threatening parasites? Are some parasites at risk of extinction? So I do this using parasitic helminths. Helminths is an informal grouping of soft-bodied, primarily internal parasites, including the roundworms, the tapeworms, the flukes, and lastly, the spiny-headed worms. There's over 300,000 species of parasites on Earth, so many species. And I've studied them in the rainforest of Costa Rica, up to the tundra of Canada. And now I'm in the wonderful state of Georgia here at KSU. Now, I mentioned I time travel. I can't obviously really time travel, so how do I do it? Well, I turn to an unlikely source. I use natural history museums as a basis of my work. There are billions of plant and animal species in natural history museums around the globe, and they have centuries worth of data. So they tell us how things were in the past, they can help us compare to how things are now, and then we can even predict future conditions in ecosystems based on what we know has happened previously. Now, unfortunately, parasites are very underrepresented in collections, as they were pretty much everywhere else, but luckily, there's another way for us to get data. When many animals are preserved in museums, the parasites are preserved right alongside them. So each fish, or each bird, or each mammal serves as a time capsule. So this is a fish that I dissected when I was doing my postdoc. It was collected in 1930 off the coast of southern New England at a depth of about 800 feet and by a research vessel. And this specimen serves as a time capsule. We can open it up and see what parasites were infecting these fish in the 1930s. So these are the organs that I've taken out, and right away, I can see that it was infected with multiple roundworms. These roundworms look like they were collected yesterday. They were very well preserved. But in actuality, they're more than 100 years old, older than anyone in this room. And so we're able to look into the past to see what parasites were there. And then we can put all this data together and look at how parasites vary through time. Are some parasites increasing, or are they decreasing, or are they staying the same? Are some at risk of extinction? This is what I help us figure it out, and we do find that actually some parasites are in trouble. So I compare these data with things like sea surface temperature to look at how climate change may be impacting parasites. And we find actually climate change is threatening them. We see a 38% decrease in parasite populations with every degree increase in sea surface temperature. And this is not a good thing. So here at KSU, we have a collection of about 2,000 fish, and I brought some with us. And they were collected in Georgia between 1999 and 2016. And I use these to answer similar questions. In particular, I look at how urbanization affects fish health and the parasite infections. So some current projects we have in my lab are looking at the impact of the Allatoona Dam on fish and parasite communities. We look at microplastics, how they impact fish health and parasite infections. And then I also look at how human population density is impacting parasite burdens. Are there more parasites in heavily urban areas or reverse? I want to tell you about another project I work on. I work with state and federal government agencies as well as wildlife rescues, and I use their dead specimens in my research to look at how terrestrial specimens are impacted by urbanization. Are terrestrial animals sicker or more healthy in these more urban areas? And I recently had the privilege to dissect a juvenile black bear that Georgia DNR brought me. Unfortunately, it had to be put down because it was a nuisance, but I'm able to reuse this specimen. And I was also able to give the skin and the skull to various classes at KSU in order to be used as learning tools in multiple classes. Very recently, I held an opossum dissection day for students in my lab. This was a great experience for them. They gained a lot of new skills. I promise you there are smiles underneath those masks. And they really enjoy the opportunity to get out of the classroom and get their hands literally dirty. I couldn't do my work without them, and I am so appreciative. So I also have a lot of collaborations. I'm always looking for more. So if you are interested in fish or wildlife health, please get in touch. Or if you work with hunting or fishing groups, I'd love to talk to you. I also do a lot of outreach with schools, and I'm always happy to talk about my work or science in general, so please get in touch. I have business cards over there. So in conclusion, parasites are very understudied, but very important. But we know basically nothing about them, especially in Georgia. So I'm really looking forward to being able to learn more about parasites in Georgia, and I hope that I've sparked at least a little bit of appreciation for them in the audience tonight. And like I mentioned, I have specimens, and I'd love to talk to you about them. Feel free to come look at them. Thank you so much.